All right, welcome y'all. Today we are going to be making a simple moving average technical indicator in MQL4 for our MetaTrader 4 trading platform. I think that the simple moving average is basically like the hello world of technical indicators, so this will be a great place for us to start this series. Now, we're not going to get too deep into the weeds today. However, we are going to cover going through the setup wizard to create an indicator. We're going to look at the OnCalculate function for indicators. Also taking a look at the IMA function in MQL4 for calculating a moving average. And of course, at the end of this all, we will have made our very own simple moving average custom indicator in MQL4. All right, let's get to it. All right, so I am in my MetaTrader 4 app right now, and I'm going to go ahead and click up here to open my MetaEditor IDE. As I said in the previous video, this is the IDE I highly recommend you guys use when writing MQL4. It comes with MetaTrader 4 by default. And this will provide us with a lot of shortcuts when we're writing our code, as well as easy file management systems. So let's let this open up here. And all right. Now we're going to create a new indicator. We can go ahead and click on New in the top left here. And this will take us through the setup wizard. So we want to do a custom indicator. Let's hit Next. Now we can name this whatever we want, put in whatever subfolder we want. Let's just keep it simple. I'm going to call this the tutorial SMA. And you can put your name here, of course, and you link to your website, or you can just leave this blank, whatever you want. Okay, parameters. We are going to take one input for this indicator. We're going to let the user decide how many periods they want to use to calculate their moving average. So let's go ahead and add something here. We can call this the periods parameter. It will be of type integer, and for an initial value, let's just go ahead and give this 20. Of course, the user can change this whenever they want, but 20 will be a great place to start. Okay, let's hit Next. Now, nothing we need to change on this screen. I'll talk about what OnCalculate is just a little later on. So let's go ahead and hit Next. Okay, we do not want our indicator in a separate window. We do want it on top of the bars on the chart. So let's leave this box unchecked. We do, however, want a plot, right? We actually want the line, the simple moving average itself. So let's go ahead and add a plot here. I'm just going to call this plot SMA. It will be of type line, and colors, I'm actually going to choose blue for mine. You guys can pick whatever you want for here. I prefer blue for my moving average if it's just standalone. Okay, so we're all set. We can go ahead and click Finish. And this will bring up a nice boilerplate template of code for us to work on. Also worth noting, if we look in our file tree over here under our indicator section, we can see our tutorial SMA has appeared right down there. Okay, so let's take a look at this code template just a little bit. We're not going to look at too much, but just a few things. So the plot that we created in the last step of that setup wizard, we can see where a lot of that code went, right? We called it SMA. We said it was going to be a line. I said my color was going to be blue. So this is where the setup wizard put some of that code. We can also see our input parameter got placed right under input parameters. We called it periods. We said its initial value was going to be 20. I want to point this out just so you guys know where you would add code if you wanted to create additional input parameters or additional plots after the setup wizard. But we're not actually going to do that today. We'll cover that in a future video. Today, we're really just going to focus on this OnCalculate function. So what is the OnCalculate function? Well, it's going to be responsible for actually drawing our indicator on the chart, right? Calculating the value of our indicator and putting it on the chart. Now, for more information on this, let me go ahead and direct you to the MQL4 documentation. This is a really great resource. I'll put this link in the description, by the way. This is a really great resource for learning more about anything about the MQL4 language. So there's some explanation about OnCalculate here, as well as some example code that you can copy into your own indicator and kind of see what some of these values are. But I'll leave that to you, and I'll just give you guys the quick rundown. So as I said, OnCalculate is responsible for actually drawing our indicator on the chart. And it's triggered by two separate events. The first event that triggers OnCalculate is initialization. So when the user actually adds this indicator to their chart, right, they initialize it. When that happens, we would expect to see our indicator drawn on the chart over every bar that's currently on the chart. So when we initialize our indicator and trigger OnCalculate for the first time, its job is to sort of retrospectively calculate this indicator for every bar that's already on the chart, all the way through history. The second time we call OnCalculate, and the other event that's going to trigger it, is when we get a new tick in. Now, this can either create a new bar or simply move the current bar that we are on. So when that happens, like let's say we get a new bar, we're going to want to make sure our indicator stays up to date with the new data coming in. So just to recap, the OnCalculate function is triggered by two events: initialization, and then also when we get a new tick in. So let's write a for loop to handle both cases. The first case being initialization, where we want to draw our indicator retrospectively over every bar on the chart, and then also handle new data coming in to keep our indicator up to date with the new data. So in order to do that, we're going to take a look at two values here that come with the OnCalculate function: rates total and prev calculated. So what are these? Well, rates total equals the total amount of bars that are on the chart already. And prev calculated, well, you can think of this as how many bars have we already processed through the OnCalculate function. And what this literally equals is the return value of the previous OnCalculate call, which happens to be rates total. So to clarify here, the very first time we call OnCalculate on initialization, rates total is going to equal the amount of bars that are already on the chart, historically and just in front of us. Prev calculated on that first call is going to equal 0, because we've never called OnCalculate before. The next time we call OnCalculate, right, when we get a new tick in, well, rates total will either be the same, or if we got a new bar, it will be one more than its previous amount. And prev calculated will equal whatever the last rates total was, which again, depending on the circumstance, will either be equal to the current rates total or one less than the current rates total, assuming a new bar came in. So let's save the difference between those two values in our own variable. Let's create an integer. We call this uncalculated bars. And again, that's going to equal the difference between rates total and prev calculated. Okay, now let's write that for loop I was talking about. This is going to be responsible, again, for retrospectively drawing our indicator on all of the bars already on the chart, and then also keeping our indicator up to date with new data coming in. So I'm going to say for int I equals 0, I is less than uncalculated bars, I plus plus. And inside here is where we will actually calculate our moving average and add it to the chart. Okay, so how do we actually do that? Well, in order to add our indicator to the chart, we're going to calculate the moving average and put it into a buffer variable. So if we scroll up here, we see under indicator buffers, I have this thing called SMA buffer. And notice that it's called SMA buffer. That is what I called my plot. And this is what's known as a series array. So the 0th element of this array is actually a reference to the current bar on the chart. The first element of this array is 1 bar back. The second element is 2 bars back. We can kind of think of it as a reverse array, right? One that we would read from right to left instead of your standard left to right. And again, this is where we're going to place our moving average calculation to actually draw the value on our chart. So let's say SMA buffer of I, and that's going to be equal to, now we could calculate the moving average ourselves, or we could just use a built-in function of MQL4. So let's just go ahead and do the latter. No reason to recreate the wheel here. So I'm going to come back to the documentation, and I already have this looked up. I'll put this link in the description as well. This is the IMA function, and this calculates the moving average indicator and returns its value. So that is precisely what we want. So let's go ahead and add this. And the nice thing about MetaEditor is once you start typing one of these functions, it will show you all of the necessary parameters that you need to add. So let's see. First one here is we need the symbol, right? What pair are we trading right now? If we just put null here, this will default to the current symbol that the user is looking at on their chart, which is most often what we want to do. So we'll just put null for that. Time frame is the same thing. If we put null here, this value will default to the current time frame on the chart. And now there are other values we can put here to achieve the same result, but we'll just stick with null for now. Okay, we now have to put the periods. And remember, this was an input variable that we have a default value for, and also the user will be able to change. So let's just add periods down here. Okay, next one, MA shift. This is nothing we're going to worry about for this tutorial, so we're just going to keep this at 0, no shift on that calculation. And now we need an enum, an enumeration, the MA method. Basically, is this going to be a simple moving average, an exponential moving average, a weighted moving average? If you're not sure what to put here, let's take a look at the documentation. So let's go and say, what are my enum MA method options? Okay, so here we go. We just have 4 of them, and we just want the first one, simple moving average. Now I can either put 0 here, or I can put mode SMA. And I'm going to stick with mode SMA just for readability. We'll do mode SMA. Okay, now the applied price. Are we calculating this moving average based on the close of the candles, the open, the high, the low? Again, if you're not sure what you can put here, we can go to the documentation. So let's see, enum applied price. And we just want the first value again, so price close. So we'll add that. Price close. Okay, and finally, shift. Which bar are we doing this calculation for? Again, we're not going to do anything fancy here. Let's just keep it in line with what our buffer is at. So we'll just put I for this, and that our semicolon. Okay, this is pretty much everything we have to do for this indicator. So let's compile, make sure there are no errors. And we're all good, 0 errors, 0 warnings. Fantastic. So now we can come back to our MetaTrader 4 chart. And if we look under our indicators section, scroll down, we will see our tutorial SMA. Let's give that a double click. And here's where we can change that input if we want. We can change the color of this line and the style if we want, but let's just keep all the default values. Okay, and there we have it. That is a simple moving average that we just wrote in MQL4 for our MetaTrader 4 trading platform. So that is it for the lesson today, y'all. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks as always for watching this video. If you found this content valuable, please let me know by liking or subscribing to my channel. If you have any questions or comments about the material we covered today, feel free to drop a comment down below. And of course, please check out some of my other videos for more useful information. All right, I'll leave y'all to it.